When it comes to garden irrigation, watering my ground beds and my raised beds, over the years I've tried it all. Overhead irrigation, soaker hoses, drip lines, and most recently drip tape. But if I have to be honest, I haven't been all that happy with any of it. When it comes to really small spaces or even containers, a lot of people do hand water, and that's something that I like to do with my containers, but with my big garden, I just don't have the time to do hand watering. That's why the garden irrigation is so important to me in this space. But the problem with overhead irrigation is that it wastes a lot of water and you've got evaporation, and if you live in an area where you're prone to fungal diseases, the overhead irrigation can sometimes exacerbate those. So that's a definite no for me in my garden space. The second thing I've tried is soaker hoses, and while soaker hoses will work well for small areas and for a short amount of time, I've found that over the years sometimes they tend to be unreliable, they may clog, and they may not continue to actually saturate the entire area over the long haul. Another option that I've actually been using for many years is drip lines, and while it served me well enough, I started noticing that in a space as big as mine, the drip lines that were closest to the water source were doing fine at watering, but the ones further away from my water source, those plants didn't get even irrigation. So I was noticing that the plants further away were starting to suffer. That's why this year I decided to try another option, and that is drip tape. Now, I really have enjoyed the drip tape. It's worked better than the other options, but my problem with drip tape is that it was very cumbersome to put together. It was almost like this gigantic game of Tetris, and I was never good at that game anyway. Because of that, I actually didn't finish the project. This bed right here, I did not get my drip tape on, and neither did I with one of my other raised beds behind me. But what I was really happy about is this company called Garden in Minutes contacted me and asked me to trial one of their pre-made garden grids. And I was really excited to try this option because supposedly you can put your whole garden irrigation system in a raised bed of any configuration together in an average of a minute. Now, let me tell you, they are testing me here because, as I mentioned, I'm not great at this kind of thing, but hey, I'm up for a challenge, so let's see how it works. All right, so the purpose of the Garden in Minutes garden grid is to take the hassle out of irrigation, which I can tell you it's a hassle in general. So it also requires no tools. So that's a big plus for me. This one is a 4x8 garden grid. You can get these in different configurations based on what size that you are putting this grid in. So I'm going to take out all the pieces here. They're in sections. And they send a packet of seeds in here, which is always nice. And then here is the instructions. So let's see how well I can read instructions. So this is going to connect to my main water line. I'm going to put that aside for now. I'll probably be connecting it over here to this hose. And we've got 4 sections, section A, B, C, and D. So I'm going to set those out. Oh, they even have it labeled section A, there's a sticker. B, C, and D. Okay, so the main thing I need to know before I put this together is that section C is going to have the area that will connect to the main water line. So I need to make sure that that's where I want it to be. And I'm not sure that it is. I think I want it to be on this side. So I'm going to flip it. And now I just have to put the pieces together. Okay, that was easy enough. I do know they recommend if you want to leave it out in the sun for a little bit to let the black warm up a little bit. I do know from doing that with drip tape that does help. We're early in the morning, but if we had let this out in the sun, I'm sure it would go a lot quicker. But still, it's not that hard to connect. actually not hard at all. So now that we have all this assembled, the final step is to get it connected to the hose. And one thing that you'll notice here is that you've got a ready-made square foot garden method right here. So each of these squares are a foot square, and this is going to make it really easy for me to plant my broccoli in the spacing that I want them to be planted in this garden. But first of all, let's go ahead and get the mainline hose hooked up to the system. So this side is going to connect very easily to the center of the garden grid. I'll show you that in a minute, but I want to go ahead and get it connected to the main source first. And this particular connection will connect to your regular garden hose, spigot, whatever you use. I'm going to be connecting it to my current drip tape system right here. So it's actually not long enough. I will eventually connect this, but first I'm going to lengthen my poly tubing here to be able to connect over there. All right, so let's now see how it works. All right, a couple things to note about this is that I do have a water pressure regulator at the source of where all of my irrigation is for this garden. And so that's why you see more of a drip here than a stream. But if you don't have a water pressure regulator, you're probably going to see more of a stream for more heavy saturation. And that may work completely well for you depending on how many beds you have. I like this because I can use this along with my drip tape and everything I already have in place, and I don't have to worry about it just oversaturating this particular bed. But the coverage here is, in my opinion, so much better than what I've had with my drip lines and my drip tape. And planting on this square foot grid method is going to make it really easy. Number one, to know where my plant spacing is going to be, but number two, to make sure that all the plants are getting well watered at each irrigation. So let's go ahead and plant these broccoli plants today. I got my broccoli planted here, and I have to say I love the grids. It makes spacing these plants so much easier. One thing that I did notice is that they do tell me in the instructions to make sure that this is very level, and I can see that I think I'm sloped a little bit on this side and there's a lot more water coming out there than it is up here. So that's something I need to go back in and level it a little bit more so I can have more even coverage. But the good thing about this is that I can at any time just lift it up and move it if I want to. Of course, it's harder with these mature transplants, but at the end of the season, when I'm switching from one crop to another, I can move it up and then amend with compost like I do between all of my other crops, and it would be very easy. So far, I'm really impressed. I'm excited about being able to have this broccoli irrigated well, especially during the early part of the fall, the late part of the summer when we don't usually get a lot of rain. And I'm excited to see how these plants are going to grow. Overall, setup was quick. It was easy. I think that they live up to their name of simplifying gardening with no tools and no hassle and very little time. So if you're someone who you're just wanting something quick and easy for your irrigation, I do recommend checking out Garden in Minutes, and you can get a discount using my promo code Jill10. Check out the link in the description. And if you use Garden in Minutes, I would love to hear your experience as well. And if you're like most people and you're wanting to compare your different irrigation options, I recommend that you take a listen to this podcast episode where I talk all about the different irrigation options that I have chosen in my garden. And for more videos like this one, be sure to like and subscribe.